I need to give you another presentation from Prometheus UA. And this one is going to be about the Russian Madness Parade that they are doing on every 9th of May. Let me start reading. So now it's going to be the words of Prometheus UA. On May 9th, every year, Russia celebrates Victory Day in World War II. In recent decades, it has become the country's most important holiday. Ironically, it was they who, together with Hitler's Germany, started the war by invading Poland. A victory, is a strange name. After all, one totalitarian regime defeated another. In Ukraine, people often say that the Gulag defeated Auschwitz. In fact, many Nazi death camps didn't stop operating even after being liberated by Soviet troops. Auschwitz, Sachsenhausen, Buchenwald all continued to function, now run by Soviet executioners. In just a few years, they killed tens of thousands more. The first military parade in Moscow was held on Stalin's orders only on June 24th, 1945. In the years that followed, there were no parades or veteran marches on Red Square. In 1947, the status of the holiday was changed. It remained a state holiday, but it became a working day. That same year, the authorities cancelled veteran benefits and payments. It made sense. Veterans were still alive. Eyewitnesses of the meat grinder assaults where millions of Soviet soldiers died. There was nothing to celebrate. The Soviet regime found veterans to be an uncomfortable reminder of the incompetence of its generals. They did everything they could to reduce their visibility. Hundreds of thousands of disabled veterans, those with amputations, nicknamed samovars, were forcibly removed from cities so no one would see the true cost of the war. The Valaam House of Invalids became infamous, a de facto concentration camp on a northern Russian island. By 1965, 20 years after the war, most of the severely wounded veterans had died. That's when the authorities reinstated May 9th as a non-working holiday and held a second military parade on Red Square, the first since 1945. I didn't know about that gap. 20 years. That's crazy. The third parade came 20 years later in 1985, the fourth in 1990. More gaps. It wasn't until 1995, with the Russian Federation already in place, that May 9th parades on Red Square became an annual event. These were hard financial times for Russia, still recovering from the collapse of the USSR and not yet flush with oil money. In the mid-90s, Russia was still feeding the US its bush legs, cheap frozen chicken. I've written about this before, and Rick once read it to you. Yeah, guys, you should remember that previous presentation, and you probably should remember this photo on the screen, made in the 90s, with those Bush's legs, so-called frozen chicken. Russia had nothing else to brag about, so they made Victory Day in World War II their greatest historical achievement. While the rest of the world looked toward the future, Russia turned its head backward and continues to gaze at the myth of a glorious past. Glorious past. Nostalgic for the empire it lost in 1991. As oil prices rose and Russian exports increased, the scale of the May 9th military parades grew year after year. After Putin came to power, May 9th became a central event in Russia, a tool for militarizing society. And the society deeply chauvinistic and imperialist, eagerly embraced the idea of revenge and empire restoration. Around the world, this day is one of remembrance for the war victims, accompanied by the phrase "never again." In Russia, the main slogan became "we can do it again." Russians started plastering it on their cars. Another popular phrase, "to Berlin." Yeah, let me show this. This is the next photo. Often seen written even on German-made cars, because Russian ones are complete junk. Still, that doesn't stop Russians from believing they are the greatest nation on earth. And here's, I think, a Land Rover. So this one says, "for the motherland, to Berlin." Yes, T-34. Every year the military parade becomes a show. No analogues in the world, they say. In Russian, I'm not going to be even pronouncing that. But we have this term, analogov нет. So basically, no analogs. It has no analogs. So yeah, their new military equipment is just the best and the most unique in the world. They parade a single prototype of some armored vehicle and claims it's better than anything in the West. But on the actual battlefield, Russians are already fighting on electric scooters and donkeys. You can be sure they won't show that at the Moscow parade, to seem and not to be. In 2004, Ukrainians launched the Orange Revolution, choosing a path toward the West and the civilized world, not Russia. Putin realized that without Ukraine, he couldn't rebuild the empire, so he stepped up his efforts. In Ukraine, the revolution's symbol was the orange ribbon. This one. Putin decided to create his own symbol. He came up with the St. George's ribbon, which appeared on May 9th, and at first it was a symbol of victory at the parade, but later it became a symbol of the Russian world. As always, in Russia, the history of this is full of lies and distortions. Originally, the St. George's ribbon was a part of an award in the Russian Empire. You see the award on the screen right now. In 1943, Stalin carried out a series of reforms. He brought back shoulder boards on the uniform, founded the Russian Orthodox Church, which has been banned until then, and introduced a similar ribbon into a Soviet military award. However, it was called the Guards ribbon. Interestingly, during World War II, over 1 million Russians fought against the USSR as part of the German forces. Among them were many officers of the Russian Empire, and they wore the George's ribbon. By the way, on the right in the photo is General Pyotr Krasnov, not implying anything, of course. Yeah. The hysteria around this day in Russia, around the 9th of May, their great victory day, has reached an insane level. A new term even emerged, victory madness, победобесие. Yeah, victory madness is a good term here. The St. George's ribbon was everywhere. So that's how it looks, guys. It is, you can see that ribbon on every kid and mom on that photo. Everyone are wearing the Soviet military uniform, and I'll show you more photos. So let's go one by one. Yeah, they really like to dress their kids into military uniforms. You can see students on this one. I think they are like schoolers, having those ribbons all over them. This is their favorite drink of all the Russians, vodka dressed in those ribbons, because on the 9th of May you gotta get drunk as a pig. On this one you can see the kids who seem to be really enjoying being put into the tank and wearing those helmets on their heads with stars, with the Soviet stars. Kids usually love it that much that they cry, like just like this one that was put in the tank, basically, well, not really strangled, but definitely tied in that one. That's what we call Победобесие, which is victory madness. Yeah, these are the shapes that it usually takes, or these kids marching, pretending to be soldiers, taught to be those Soviet soldiers from their childhood. We move on. In 2014, Russian occupiers began wearing this ribbon at the start of the Russian-Ukrainian war. Here is a Russian with such a ribbon near the crash site of the passenger plane Boeing 777, which was shot down by them, MH17 guys. The plane was flying from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur, and look at this photo. Yes, those Russian soldiers and also soldiers of so-called militia of those so-called republics, they were wearing those ribbons as a symbol of the Russian world. And there's another photo here, which a lot of you have seen. It's also from MH17, and I think there's going to be a description to this photo. 298 people died, including 80 children. They were from many countries around the world. Australia, 27 people. Belgium, 4. Canada, 1. Germany, 4. Indonesia, 12. Malaysia, 43. Netherlands, 193 people. New Zealand, 1. Philippines, 3. United Kingdom, 1 person. However, these countries, those two, express their deep concern and continued doing business with Russia. Now we see that such weak actions only encourage Russia to kill. In Ukraine, it's derisively called koloratka due to its resemblance to the Colorado potato beetle. Oh yeah, we have those in Ukraine. And of course, since 2014, the ribbon has been banned in Ukraine. Yes, that's what we do with that ribbon, guys. We just put all of it into trash. After 2015, Russia added another element to their parade. I didn't know that it was after 2015, by the way. The Immortal Regiment. So it looks like this. It's a march where people carry portraits of those who died in World War II. And you can see Putin himself there in the front row, carrying one on this photo. This entire thing was artificially created by the Russian authorities to serve as a propaganda glorifying Russian greatness. But here's how Russians really treat their ancestors. And the next photo will display how they treat their ancestors. They basically throw it into piles, and that's, yeah, there are many of those photos there. Still, Russian propaganda is well oiled. The Immortal Regiment has become a tool of foreign influence abroad. Here's Washington, the US capital, on May 4th, 2025. Yeah, just today, guys. Next photo, here it is. That was today in your capital, my dear rollers from United States. And I know that a lot of people went to counter that protest, and there were Ukrainian flags, and people were shouting out that Russia is a terrorist state, and all of that should not be there. So thank you, everyone. If you participated in that one, it's very important. Thank you. I mean, in the pro-Ukrainian protest that was against this one. These people are around you right now, and over the years they've been doing this in dozens of countries around the world. Yeah, guys, it's happening everywhere, in Europe too. Look around you. It's very likely that these days in your own countries Russians will be marching through your cities, carrying the symbols of their empire and their killings. I have to admit, Russian propaganda abroad has been far more effective than their actions on the battlefield. Over the time, Russians have increasingly insisted that they made the greatest contribution to World War II. They always downplayed the impact of Lend-Lease when the US and Britain sent hundreds of thousands of military trucks, tens of thousands of tanks and planes, and hundreds of thousands of tons of explosives and food to the USSR. Today, the mere 31 tanks and 0 planes the US has sent to Ukraine look pathetic in comparison. Eventually, Putin started claiming that Russia could have defeated Germany on its own. That is utter nonsense. 100% of Ukraine's territory became a battlefield. Some cities, like Kharkiv, changed hands 3 times. And 4 of my great-grandfathers were killed by Nazis. Millions of Ukrainians fought against Germany. Countless cities were destroyed. Both sides used scorched earth tactics. And in contrast, less than 5% of Russia's territory was ever occupied. They simply don't know what the real war is. But slowly and louder each time, we Ukrainians will teach them what war really means. And one day we will hold our own victory parade in Moscow on the ruins of Red Square. Looking forward to that day. And Rick will raffle off some of the debris from Kremlin rollers. What would you like? Maybe the Soviet star or something from Lenin's mausoleum? Rick, just for me, please, piss on Stalin's grave. It's a small thing, but it would bring me joy. And to bring that day closer, rollers, please keep donating to Rick. That was a pretty big article, but I think it was important to mention all of those things. Thank you, Prometheus UA.